Hello everybody, I'm Callum at Repair Wins, and in the video today I'm going to be replacing the keyboard on this Lenovo laptop. I am actually recording the intro after the fact. The keyboard's already been replaced. I've got the old faulty one here. I wanted to make sure the process worked before recording an intro, because otherwise the video never would have seen the light of day. But the point is, this laptop had a bad keyboard. I removed the old one, I replaced it. Back in the day that was as simple as taking 3 screws out the bottom of the machine, popping a couple of plastic clips, the old keyboard would fold forwards, you disconnect it, plug the new one in, screw it back down, happy days. But now, if you look at the back of this one, you'll notice there's loads of really small holes in it. So what they do is they have a bunch of plastic pegs that stick out of the palm rest, the keyboard sits on the top, and they melt the top of the peg down for, every single peg to hold the keyboard in place. Meaning that in order to do a replacement, you have to dismantle the whole machine, you have to take everything out, and when I say everything, I mean everything. Then you have to break all of the little plastic pegs off, put the new keyboard in, and then find something to basically secure it down and to secure the metal frame above it down. The point is, I came up with what I think is a really decent method, and so I'm going to show the method off to you in the video. It's easy for someone to do, it is a bit tedious, but it's something that you can do yourself at home. So without any further ado, I'll switch to the overhead camera and let's get this thing fixed. The teardown isn't the subject of this video. Obviously the keyboard replacement is a subject, but I will just sort of put the machine on the desk and start taking it apart. I'm going to sort of try and outline the general process. So the idea is you'll pull all of the screws out the bottom of the machine, because unfortunately everything is going to need to come out of the laptop. This is a needlessly complicated job, because basically why wouldn't it be? So your first step though is to remove all the screws from the bottom cover. Once you've removed all the screws, you remove the bottom cover. Now to be clear, this one is unscrewed, but it stayed stuck in the machine for some reason, so I'm just going to carry on. So you're not really supposed to use metal tools, at least that's what they say, but I have done probably over 1,000 laptops at this point, and I'm confident enough in my abilities that I'm going to use a metal tool, and I'm probably not going to have any trouble. But the premise is that you put a tool in at the seam, you go around the machine, and then when you've gone around the machine, slowly you're going to pop all the clips. Right then, I've removed the screws, I've freed the cover, and just a top tip, if you've got a VGA port on one side, then pry from the top, and then pry this side and sort of pull it off sideways, because if you just try and pry like this, you'll end up breaking this little plastic piece. Anyway then, I've removed that, and I hate to say it to you, but everything has to come out. So if you're not technically minded, this might be where you ask a technical friend to help you, or you can plod through and do this yourself, just take a lot of pictures. I can't stress this highly enough though, the first thing you do is you unplug the battery. So if the battery can't be immediately accessed, that's fine, you'll just have to continue. But what I'm going to do is remove the one screw that's securing it in place, then I'm going to sort of shimmy it forwards, and now that it's forwards, I'm going to just grab the connector and slide it backwards to unplug it. Now bear in mind on your model, there might be a clip or a catch holding it, the battery might have to come upwards. Just do a bit of googling before you try and remove it if you're unsure. Everything has been removed, and just another note for you, if you're unplugging these really small connections, you just lift them up to 90 degrees like a book, and then you basically pull the cable out. Don't just wrench on it, and then once the cable's been taken out, just fold it back closed again, because that way if you catch it, you're less likely to break it off. What I'm going to do now then is break every single one of these plastic welds, and this is the point at which you realise this job is just an absolute pain. It's completely needless. It does not need to be this difficult, it does not need to be this tedious, it does not need to be this time consuming, but that's the way that it is. So I've got sort of this pry tool that's fairly pointy. I mean, it's not sharp, you couldn't cut yourself on it, but it's fairly pointy, and the way that I prefer to do it is pretty much just to basically line it up, sort of dig it into the metal, because obviously it doesn't matter if you scratch the metal a little bit, and then just break the top of the post off. And you've got to do this for every single post holding down this thing here. So why don't I just zoom in and break a few of them off. There we go, so I've zoomed the camera down a bit. You can see I'm just folding the cable out of the way so I don't nick it by mistake. And then we're just digging it in. And they're not that hard to remove, to be honest. And the reason why I'm going to use T7000 versus B7000 is that it's black, whereas B7000 is clear. So if I use some black adhesive and a tiny bit of it is visible at the top for whatever reason, it's basically going to blend in with the keyboard that's there. But all I'm doing is just breaking free the little plastic posts in the vicinity. I'm going to press on and get the rest of them done. Hopefully that sped up section sort of got the point across. I'm pretty much now just going to remove the rest of these plastic pegs, and then when I've broken them all free, I'll return. In the real world that took about 15 minutes, and you see my hands are slightly lacerated now, so that's cool. So I had to remove the touchpad in the end, but you can see that I've freed up this metal piece. So the idea is that once it's free, you just sort of get a tool underneath one corner, and this shouldn't require too much force, to be honest. It should just be fairly willing to come off. If you've missed one or two, this is where they'll ping off at you. So you should probably wear goggles to do a job like this, to be honest. But either way, just get the tool under there and you'll start slowly popping this free. Now, you've got to be gentle because you don't want to bend it. If you bend it, it's not going to sit flat. And I can see that I've missed one, so I'll just remove that. And then if there's a side that's being a little bit stubborn, just go back to the other side and slowly work your way along. And yeah, there's another one that I must have missed or I didn't quite do properly. We're almost there. Okay, I can see this one as well, so I'll just pop that. I'll pop this one, and then there's a big one there that I've not done. Right, there we go, they're free, and now, yeah, there you are. So this piece comes off, and then you're still not done, because you've got yet more of them that hold the keyboard down, so they all need to be popped free as well. I'm going to try something here. So instead of popping the remainder, I'm just basically going to start in the weakest corner. And just as long as I'm gentle, and as long as I kind of wiggle back and forth, and I take a minute, don't want to be using silly force here. But yeah, there you go, look. Should just be able to break this free by hand. This is where it pays to repair a lot of electronics. Because I've got two of these things, it's a Hakko Omnivice, and they cost £50 or £60 a piece. So there's no way this is something the average person's going to have. But just for once, I'm going to make use of my tools because it's going to make recording easier. But I've done this before, literally just using 2 toothbrushes. So the idea is that you need to find something to balance here and to balance there. Because if you just set this face down on the desk and try and glue it in, you can see that when the keyboard is actually in the laptop, you notice how it presses through and it sticks out of the palm rest ever so slightly. So if you just set it face down on the desk, the keyboard's not actually going to be, you know, sitting flat. So the palm rest has to be lifted off of the desk slightly. But I'm going to put this down into place now. And I'm pretty much going to go around the entire keyboard, trusting that my Omnivices are going to hold it still. And I'm going to put a drop of T7000 in every single place. The thing is, I don't really know how much to use, so I'm going to err on the side of putting a bit more on versus a bit less. Now, this glue sort of sets after a couple of hours, and the recommendation is to leave it for 24 to 48 hours. Now, luckily, today's a Thursday night. I've got tomorrow off. And then over the weekend, it's going to basically be an excuse to not do any repairs. So I'm going to leave this to set up for a good long while. But anyway, you can see what I'm doing is just putting the nozzle into the hole, squeezing some glue down, and then making sure it's pressed basically flat. But gravity's your friend here. It's obviously going to hold the keyboard down. Right, that's every single one done. And I can just do with a tiny bit of weight on here just to make sure it's pressed down. So you're probably not going to have one of these to hand. I'm going to use a microwave capacitor. So there you go, that's being held down. I'll probably just sort of put something here and maybe something there. But just make sure it's weighted down. Obviously not a huge amount of weight, because otherwise this isn't going to sit flat. The palm rest is going to be bending, and you obviously don't want that. But just a little bit of weight so the keyboard is sitting flat. It looks a little bit funny, but I've just used what I had to hand. Obviously these things don't weigh very much at all. I've just made sure the keyboard's pressed flat the entire way around. And now that it's pressed flat, I've set the weights on top, and I'm going to pretty much leave it until tomorrow morning. I've left this for almost a day, and I've got to say I'm really pleased with it. I mean, I can clearly press keys on this side, spin it around. I'm not going to bend the life out of it, but you know, it's looking pretty good to me actually. All the keys are the same height, meaning the keyboard's sat nice and flush. I'm very happy with that. The second step then is to glue this piece obviously into the housing. So I'm going to slide this in place, and then remember that the keyboard ribbon cable went through here on my model. So I'll put the cable through, I'm going to set it loosely into position. So that looks semi-decent to me. You'll notice it's not perfectly flat because it never is, but once you start pushing the pegs into place and gluing it down, it'll be okay. But the reason why I've put this down now is that I obviously need to be able to clamp it without clamping the areas where the metal piece is going to sit. I've got this in place and these are screwed down, they're nice and firm. What I've realised as well is that at the top it should be fairly simple to keep it held down because there's a bunch of holes for screws that are threaded. So what I can do is go around and just make sure that it's never going to sit perfectly flat, by the way, but just get it to sit as neat and as flat as I can. Try and make sure it's pressed into every single, one of the remainders of the original posts. Because you see this corner here is not happy, but obviously it's going to be screwed down in these 3 places, so it's going to stay where it is, and then once the glue's dried it'll be alright. But if I just go around, try my best to make sure it's sitting down nice and flat, and then when it is, I can start putting the glue on again. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the screws into the areas where I can, because that way they're going to be held down nice and firmly. And then as for the touchpad area, I'm going to use a couple of these clamps, and they're going to reach through, and they're obviously going to hold it down like this once the glue is in place. I've done the best job I can of clamping this thing into place. The only areas that need improvement are this bottom corner where it doesn't quite want to sit flat, although it's sort of 0.5 millimeter. And then this corner here I'm not too pleased with, so you can see there's quite a lot of play there. So I'm not going to be stingy with this stuff. It's very, very, very cheap, and I would rather have a lasting connection. In the end, I decided to press on ahead, so you can see that I've got these yogurt pots under here, and they're doing a great job of supporting it, because when I lowered my Omnivices down, it turns out they were practically the perfect height. I've got a clamp there with a microwave capacitor on top. I've got 2 more clamps at the back, and you can see beneath them there are 2 computer screws sticking out that are making up the gap. I've got a clamp there with part of the charging port squeezed under it to make the space. I've got another clamp here of a BIOS battery. And then at the top there's no issue because it's just full of screws. Just make sure that the keyboard ribbon cable is pushed through beforehand, because you really don't want to be, gluing this piece down and trapping the cable beneath it. But otherwise, just do your best to get the piece of metal sitting flat, squeeze all the glue on, and then leave it. Just leave it for an entire day, and then once it's been left, you'll be able to put your machine back together. Everything's removed. And look at that. I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way to bend and flex the life out of this laptop, but, that's clearly actually locked in place quite nicely. I'm pretty happy with it. I've just realised I've left 2 screws at the top, so I'll just get those taken out. But this T7000 is looking to me like a viable solution. I pretty much had the whole laptop back together, and then I realised that I'd need to take it apart again. And the reason for that is that I forgot to replace all of this black tape. So if you remember, and you can even see where it used to be, there used to be a bunch of black tape along here, I don't know if it's preventing dust from building up or stopping something from shorting out, but when I actually removed the motherboard, I realised that it's covered in this, sort of foil on the back anyway, and that the tape isn't really making a difference. It's certainly not stopping anything from shorting, so I don't know the real purpose of the tape, but it was probably a bit of a waste of time pulling it apart. But either way, if we're going to do this job properly, I'll just need to add some fresh tape under here. There we go then, that took quite a while. It's certainly not perfect, but remember, the original sort of tape didn't actually go in this area here, and obviously it wasn't over there and stuff, so you end up having to cut off all these tiny little rubbish pieces. It doesn't need to be exactly the same as it was out of the factory, it just needs to cover roughly the same area, and then you'll be alright. I'm very happy to report that the machine's gone back together exactly as you would expect, so everything still works the way that I want it to. So the screen opens and closes nice and smoothly. The keyboard obviously is in there and all the keys pressed down as I want them to. There's no sort of bulging bits of housing or whatever. It has all just gone back together the way that I want. So I will plug a charger in, I'll boot Linux, and we give the new keyboard a quick test, and fingers crossed it just works as we want it to. I just thought I'd actually show the keyboard working, so if I type in the quick brown fox, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. That's a sentence that uses every letter in the alphabet, and that obviously works. All the numbers work, all the keys off to the side work, and if I hold shift, you get the capital ones, I hold the other shift, I press caps lock, control and A to select everything, control and A to select. This little key here, I can do function, for the home in the end. So yeah, every single key is working exactly the way I want it to. You may have noticed at times throughout the video there was a note on the palm rest saying that the battery didn't work. Off camera I tested it in Linux and there's no problem with the battery, it works fine. And not only that, it actually holds a pretty good charge. So I don't know if it was looked at by someone prior to me and they've basically put the wrong note on the wrong machine, or maybe the battery was swapped and then they've realised the keyboard doesn't work and they've thus scrapped the machine. It's ended up in my hands. Either way, I don't know what the story is there, but I'm happy to say that the laptop is fully working. We've already got a customer for it because there's quite a lot of demand for cheap Windows 11 laptops, who would have thought? And so, you know, we're happy to sell it, we're going to give it a guarantee, and we're sure the customer's going to, you know, he's not going to have any problems with it. So with that in mind, I can absolutely recommend T7000 for gluing the keyboard in. And then if your laptop has a frame on top, also glue in the frame on the top. And as long as you don't go overboard and just, you know, completely fill the machine with T7000, and as long as you give it adequate time to dry, there's no reason why it won't work for you as well. So I'm glad to have done this little experiment here. It means that we've saved a good bit of money. We haven't had to buy a new palm rest, and more importantly, we've reduced the waste as well. So it's definitely something I'm going to be using going forwards. And with that being said, if the video was useful to you, if you're going to do the same thing, then feel free to leave me a like. Helps with YouTube's algorithm. Yes, I know, everyone says the same thing, but it helps. You know, it helps channels like mine gain subscribers, more views, repair message gets spread further, and we can just try and make the world just a little bit better, you know. That's I hope that didn't come off in a patronising way. That's certainly not the intent. But seriously, you know, a like, subscription if the stuff's useful to you, if you enjoy the content. I do electronics repair, what can loosely be described as woodworking, sort of modding projects, the occasional electronic autopsy, and so on really, you know. I try and cover what I think is going to be useful. But either way, that's all I've got for you today. So I'll just go ahead and stop talking. I'm going to push the stop button. Hope you enjoyed what you saw. I'll see you next time. Take care for now, and goodbye.